What is Keir Starmer's game plan? What's the real reason he took the fight to Nigel Farage? Well, my name's Tom Harwood and this is GBN Originals. This week saw a travelling circus of lobby journalists almost miss the Prime Minister's big speech in the Northwest. Yes, their train trundling towards St Helens at one point simply decided to stop moving. Hacks resorted to buddying up and sharing cabs, at least one of which took the wrong route and had to make a screeching U-turn. Well, insert your own political metaphors here. After a number 10 press officer offered to literally run, that's a quote, literally run a group of extremely late journalists to the factory hangar containing a rather lonely Prime Minister at this point, well, Westminster's finest arrived. They arrived on the scene with seconds to spare. What greeted them was a new political reality. Keir Starmer has taken it upon himself to declare that there's a new leader of the opposition. Not the woman leading the 120-strong MP band or the human waterslide leading 72 MPs. But no, the honourable member for Clacton and his merry band of 5. In this speech to assembled journalists and factory workers, Sir Keir mentioned Nigel Farage by name on average once every minute. But what is the game plan here? Have Downing Street's strategists, struck down by horror after the local elections, seen the writing on the wall and mounted an all-hands-on-deck Stop Farage campaign? Far from it. Their wacky races trip to St Helens saw journalists witness the birth of an entirely new tactic. Far from attempting to stop Nigel Farage, Sir Keir Starmer is now doing precisely the opposite. Well, let's have a look at the polling averages since the general election. Yes, the vertical line on the right is the latest possible date for the next general election, and we can see across this graph quite how long there is to go until that next general election. But we can also see something really significant. Reform has enjoyed a remarkable rise. Their professionalisation has been rapid. The party is making smart calls on party discipline and is avoiding falling into the very online traps that are so often so tempting for less established organisations. Above it all, however, they have one enormous advantage. Everyone feels like this country is going to the dogs, and Reform are the only major modern party that hasn't been in government in the last 15 years. At a certain point in politics, the strong horse effect kicks in. Yes, the strong horse effect, the idea that winning begets winning. And a commanding position in the polls makes voters take you more seriously as a political force. And you can rinse and repeat that process. Higher polls, taken more seriously, leads to higher polling. Well, it happened with Donald Trump. It happened for a time with Jeremy Corbyn. And now it's happening with the Reform Party too. The more they win, the more they win. But what this polling average chart shows is not just the remarkable rise of the turquoise Reform Party. There are two other crucial elements to examine. First of all, what a long time we have until the next general election. 4 entire years. And secondly, gosh, that's a larger number of squiggly coloured lines than we usually care to look at. Yes, in an era of 5-party politics, you can't simply win a parliamentary majority by being simply the most popular party. You also can't risk being too unpopular. Keir Starmer, let's remember, could win a massive Commons majority on just 33.7% of the vote, but Theresa May lost her majority on 42.3%. Why? Well, it's not just about the coalition you build to support your party. It's what coalition might be built elsewhere that's minded to oppose it. More strident or unpopular politicians are more likely to act as a lightning rod to focus the minds of their opposition. The genius of the bland and boring bollard that was Keir Starmer in 2024 was that he was too inoffensive for a serious Stop Starmer scare campaign to work. This meant he could win on small pluralities of the vote with a scattered opposition. Meanwhile, Theresa May lost 13 seats and her majority in 2017, despite winning 2,301,958 more votes than David Cameron won 2 years earlier. Again, it's not the total share of the vote that you win that matters under first past the post. It's the gap between yourself and your next nearest opponent. The seeming inevitability of Theresa May's looming supermajority and her weak and wobbly campaign led to a significant coalescence around her primary opponent. Yes, Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party was able to sufficiently scare enough voters into coalescing around the official opposition to stop those nasty Tories and their nasty dementia tax. Well, today, strategists in Number 10 clearly have struck upon a similar strategy. What do I mean by that? What's their plan? Well, earlier this week, the political economist Ben Ansell drew a delightfully literary analogy. Yes, highlighting how the Reform Party are often grazing 30% in the polls, he wrote, "In our new Liliputian era, where political parties struggle to amass a quarter of the vote, this makes them Gulliver. What remains to be seen is whether Gulliver can, as in his tales, be tied down by Britain's legion of minor parties, which now include such well-known crowd favourites as the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. Remember them? Well, Keir Starmer is attempting to become that Lilliputian today. He knows his own favourability ratings are in the sewer, but he believes that when push comes to shove, the highly tactical Lib Dem and Green voters of this world are more likely to hold their noses and vote for a particularly pungent Starmer if that means keeping an even more noxious Nigel out of Number 10. Well, Labour has given up on popularity. They're now aiming to cauterise their wounds, become less generally offensive, and force a fractured electorate a choice between two parties, and thereby become, they hope, the less odious option for a workable plurality. In some ways, this is proportional representation thinking in a first-past-the-post system. They're just attempting to force voters into doing the difficult coalition negotiations to keep the radical right out of power on the day of the election, rather than doing those negotiations with other parties after that election. To this end, it's entirely in the interests of Keir Starmer to big up Nigel Farage as much as he possibly can, to blow the bellows beneath his fire and create the biggest bogeyman he can, to turn Farage into the Gulliver that Lilliput can then work together to tie down. Yes, the next election will take shape as the incumbent Prime Minister versus a challenger. No matter how many parties demand to be in a multi-party televised debate, Keir Starmer will demand to face down Nigel Farage one-on-one. And of course, Nigel Farage will be only too delighted to accept. That's the thing about this strategy. It helps both Nigel Farage and Keir Starmer. Each man wants to lead a top two party. Each man wants the largest coalition possible behind him. And Keir Starmer believes he has the edge. YouGov may well, this week, put Nigel's Reform Party 8 points clear of the second-place Labour Party. But Farage is still behind Starmer on the polling question that Ed Miliband always failed, even when leading in the polls. Who do Britons think would make the best Prime Minister? On that question, YouGov gives Starmer a 15-point lead over Farage. Just as David Cameron was able to convince many waverers in the 2015 general election to hold their noses and vote Tory just to keep the spectre of the Miliband SNP coalition out of power, Keir Starmer is attempting to do exactly the same thing today and scare the electorate with the spectre of reform. In Runcorn, that dramatic parliamentary by-election that Reform won by just 6 votes, the Labour Party had already started to dip their toe in this strategy, sending party activists to traditional Tory areas, the more well-to-do parts of the constituency, to squeeze the nervous centrist Tories. Meanwhile, Reform swept up on the council estates. To be clear, this isn't a foolproof strategy for Starmer. It requires detoxifying his Labour Party, which clearly starts with embarrassing and expensive U-turns on benefits to pensioners and parents alike. But herein lies the Prime Minister's tightrope. Over the next 4 years, Starmer has to not only shift from being hated to being merely disliked, he also has to meaningfully oversee the standard of living rising for the wider country. Often being loved and being economically rational are diametrically opposing goals. There's a long way to go before the next general election, but it's just 11 months until significant legislative elections in Scotland and in Wales. Already we have the Scottish First Minister John Swinney taking on that Starmer tactic and declaring next week's Scottish parliamentary by-election in Hamilton a straight contest between the SNP and Reform UK. Clearly the bogeyman tactic is working in their focus groups too. So look out for more "it's me versus Nigel" over the next 4 years. At this point, Labour has given up on just about every other path to clinging on to power. And don't expect Nigel Farage to mind about this one single bit. The Keir versus Nigel strategy is quite possibly his best shot at power as well. Well, what do you make of it? This is this new strategy from Keir Starmer, pretending that Nigel Farage is the leader of the opposition. It offers an opportunity for the Labour Party, of course, but perhaps it too offers a big opportunity to Reform UK. Do get involved in the comments section down below. And remember to subscribe to GBN Originals for more original content.